Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Parvajaka Ashtotar the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajaka Ashtotar the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, who can turn the heat off? Do you know how to do it? You know how to do it. Okay. We're going to be on page 607. Oh, no, don't put it on the floor. Not on the floor. Just put it under the book. Right, yeah, that's perfect. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this third day of December 2024 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 15, entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person. Text 15 on page 607. Sarvasya chaham vidisandhivishto mattah smritir jnanam apohanangcha vedaish chasarvair aham eva vedyo vedanta krid vedavid eva chaham sarvasya chaham vidisandhivishto mattak smritir jnanam apohanangcha vedaishta sarvairahameva vedyo vedanta krid vedavideva chaham sarvasya chaham vidisandhivishto mattak smritir jnanam apohanangcha vedaishta sarvairahameva vedyo vedanta krid vedavideva chaham sarvasya chaham vidisandhivishto mattak smritir jnanam apohanangcha vedaishta sarvairahameva vedyo vedanta krid vedavideva chaham. Go ahead, Tapas. Sarvasya chaham vidisandhivishto mattak smritir jnanam apohanangcha vedaishta sarvairahameva vedyo vedanta krid vedavideva chaham. Matthias. Sarvasya chaham vidisandhivishto mattak smritir jnanam apohanangcha vedaishta sarvairahameva vedyo vedaishta krid vedavideva chaham. Sarvasya chaham vidisandhivishto mattak smritir jnanam apohanangcha vedaishta sarvairahameva vedyo vedanta krid vedavideva chaham. Sarvasya chaham vidisandhivishto mattak smritir jnanam apohanangcha vedaishta sarvairahameva vedyo vedanta krid vedavideva chaham. Sarvasya chaham vidisandhivishto mattak smritir jnanam apohanangcha vedaishta sarvairahameva vedyo vedanta krid vedavideva chaham. Go ahead, Asha. One of you. Sarvasya chaham vidisandhivishto mattak smritir jnanam apohanangcha vedaishta sarvairahameva vedyo vedanta krid vedavideva chaham. Sarvasya chaham vidisandhivishto Mattak smriti jnanam apohanam cha. Vedaischa sarvairahameva vedyo. Vedanta kridin veda videvacha. Bhakta Chad.
Sarvasya chaham hridi sanavishto.
Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto.
Matasmritir ganam apohanam cha.
Mattak smriti jnanam apohanam cha.
Vedaischa sarvair aham eva vedyo.
Vedaischa sarvairahameva vedyo.
Vedanta krid veda vid eva chaham.
Vedanta kridin veda videva chaham. Before I read the synonyms, I have recorded the whole Bhagavad Gita with the Sanskrit and the translation. Sanskrit translation, like that. Which is, I also have one with the purports in it. But if you just want to learn the pronunciation like that, you can just write me and I'll send it to you free. Dravida108@gmail.com. Okay. Sarvasya, of all living beings, cha, and aham, I, vriddhi, in the heart, sannivishtaha, situated, mattaha, from me, smritihi, remembrance, jnanam, knowledge, apohanam, forgetfulness, cha, and vedai, by the Vedas, cha, also, sarvai, all, aham, I am, eva, certainly, vedaha, knowable, Vedanta Krit, compiler of the Vedanta, Vedavid, the knower of the Vedas, eva, certainly, cha, and aham, I. Krishna says, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Purport. The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from Him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all-pervading, he is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. The Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead, back to home. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Krishna in his incarnation as Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, he is the supplier and digester of foodstuff, the witness of his activity, and the giver of knowledge in the form of the Vedas, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita. He is worshipable by the conditioned soul. Thus God is all good, God is all merciful. Antak Parishta Shasta Jananam. This is from Taittiriya Aranyaka 3:11-12-2. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So not only does a living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to the dictation of the Supreme Lord situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. If one is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because a living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. The Vedic literature confirms this. Yo sao sarvar Veda giyate. In all the Vedic literature, beginning from the four Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads and Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing him. The ultimate goal is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedanta Sutra 114 confirms this in the following words: Tat tu samandhya vayat. One can attain perfection in 3 stages. By understanding the Vedic literature, one can understand the relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different processes, one can approach Him. And at the end, one can attain the supreme goal, who is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So this is a very memorable and important verse in the Bhagavad Gita. What Krishna is saying here, first in the first line, I am present in the heart of every living entity. Now that includes not only human beings, but wherever there is what we call an organism, a combination of a physical body and a soul. And we find, just like these trees out here, the plants, the flowers, the bushes in the garden, they're also living entities. But their consciousness is much, much more rudimentary and covered. The human life is special because of our advanced consciousness, the big brain. And we can, sorry, got a little water. Thank you. So we can inquire into the reason for being. We can inquire, the important question is that, who are we? How did we get here? And why are we suffering? Why do I have to face death? I don't want to, and yet everyone has to face that. Why is that? So this why question, there's even a Upanishad called the Kena Upanishad. Kena means why. That's an essential question that only human beings can answer. The cats and dogs don't ask why. They ask where. Where is food? Where is my mate? Where is safety? The big dog is coming after me, whatever. But not why. And most human beings don't ask it either. They're also, especially in this age, we're so absorbed in just the hard struggle for existence, trying to keep body and soul together and pay the rent, whatever. And those concerns generally take up all of our consciousness. But the human form of life is a special gift. Prabhupada came to teach that. And the Bhagavad Gita teaches that, and the Vedas teach that. In fact, in this purport, the word Vedanta is used. Even the verse also contains that. Vedanta Krit. Vedanta is made of 2 words, Veda and Anta. Anta means end, and Veda means knowledge. So the culmination of all knowledge is in this book called the Vedanta Sutra. Sutras are little aphorisms. They're very concise, very terse, actually. The first one is Atato Brahma Jigyasa, which is a call to all human beings. It means now, therefore. Now, you don't usually begin a book with the word therefore. Therefore, but the book itself is the end of all the Vedas. So there's a therefore. Now that you are a human being, you should inquire into Brahman. Okay, well, what is Brahman? Next sutra, second sutra. Janma Yasya Yataha, which means the source of everything. Janma is a word for birth. There's a famous holiday. We all, every Indian, even if they're not devotees, they celebrate it. Janmashtami. It means the 8th day of the waning or waxing moon, I forget. That's the Ashtami part. And Janma means birth. It's Krishna's birthday, his appearance day, the anniversary of that. It's a big holiday in India, and we celebrate it in every temple. So, but here the word Janma means creation. Where did everything come from? That's another question. I remember as a little kid, I was a total atheist, but I looked up in the sky. We were out in the country. There was like the Milky Way, you know, the thousands of stars, and it's just, Prabhupada even mentions that near the beginning of the Bhagavatam. A person looks up in the sky and all the stars, and where did all that come from? What's out there, right? And isn't that why we try to send man to the moon, you know? And we have all. I don't know if do you live in San Diego? Okay, so you may notice, I noticed when I first moved here, that there aren't that many streetlights. It's dark. I mean, there are a few, but not as many as you need for a city. What's going on? You know why? Because of the Mount Palomar, which has been, it's a big observatory up in the hills around Escondido, I think, right? And they said, well, look, you know, we need a dark sky, and if you have all these street lights, it's going to damage how much we can see out there. So that's why it's not nothing. They have one at every corner or so. But you walk down these streets at night, you know, and it's really dark, and it's extra dark. So the human life is this chance. It's a chance for inquiring, atato brahma jigyasa. And Janmad says, now, interestingly enough, as I think Prabhupada mentions in this purport, the sutras, they need explanation. They need commentary. Because they're so terse, you know, they can be interpreted in so many ways. So we have these 4 sampradayas. You know, sampradayas means disciplic succession that are from disciple to student and on down. You find the basic teaching that God is Krishna, or Narayan is another name, is an expansion, and we are all part and parcel of God. We're His eternal servants. In other words, these are bhakti lines. One coming from the goddess of fortune, Sri Sampradaya. You know, that's what you find Ramanujacharya and like that, Madhvacharya. One coming from the 4 Kumaras, called the Kumara Sampradaya. One coming from Lord Shiva, called the Rudra Sampradaya. And our Sampradaya coming down from Brahma, from Lord Brahma. So it's the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. Madhvacharya is in there, and of course Lord Chaitanya is, you know, Gaudiya Sampradaya. So that means that there's a line of spiritual masters and disciples, and the leading disciple, and they also become spiritual masters. And this way the knowledge is passed down faithfully and propagated just suitable for the time and the circumstance and the audience for each age. Now, Srila Prabhupada, he did a very wonderful thing, because the knowledge had come down, but it was basically in India, the knowledge of Krishna consciousness. And certainly Lord Chaitanya's movement was in India. But Lord Chaitanya himself said, Priti Bitti Achayati Nadarati Gram Sarvata Prachar Hobe Mori Nam. Forgive my Bengali. It's worse than my Sanskrit. My English is better than my Sanskrit too, anyway. But, huh? Oh, really? Okay, so what does that mean? He said, Lord Chaitanya is saying, in all the towns and villages all over the earth, Prithvi means the earth. Prithvi is the word for the earth. Nagarati Gram, grams are the towns and villages. My name will be chanted. My name will be proclaimed. Now, it's the commentators and the acharyas understand that he's saying the Hare Krishna mantra will be propagated in addition to his name. They're non-different. So that's understood. So, okay, that was 500 years ago, and he propagated all over India. But even the modern disciples of Srila Prabhupada's guru, all except for Prabhupada, there was an effort really pushed by Bhaktisiddhanta to spread it to England. You know, he sent some disciples there, great expense, it was high hopes, but they really couldn't do much, and they came back. But Prabhupada himself got the order that you should preach in English abroad, you know. said, well, my godbrothers failed in London. If I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail someplace else. So he decided to come to America, to New York. And it was absolutely amazing. In other words, he left India. He wasn't in his youth anymore. He was 69 already. He actually turned 69 on the boat, because he celebrated Janmashtami on the boat. It happened to be that time of year, August and September. So he turned 69, and he wasn't in the best of health. He had basically no money. He had a few rupees, which couldn't even be exchanged in New York. But he had his books. He had his first books that he printed at great effort. His 3-volume, called the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And somehow he survived 2 heart attacks. He said, he wrote later, if I had a third, I knew I would have been gone, you know. But he had a dream, and Krishna said, all right, I'm going to take charge of the boat, you know. And then it was a very calm sailing all across the Atlantic during hurricane season. I mean, it was miraculous. So, but he's still, what to do in America. He really had one contact in Pennsylvania where he went first, but that was out in the boonies. Now that little town that he went to has become world famous now. Have you ever heard of Butler, Pennsylvania?
Only because I'm from Pennsylvania.
Oh, you're from Pennsylvania.
Not for the reason that you're from.
Anyway, Butler has become famous for another reason, which we won't go into now. But it's basically a small town, right? I mean, it's near Pittsburgh. So, but there was someone there who he could stay with. He was the son of a pious Indian in India who would always write his son and said, "Okay, there's a sadhu coming. You should put him up in your house in Butler." So the son, being very dutiful, said, "Okay," but none of them ever came. It was hard getting from India to America. So he thought, well, it's the same thing. Of course I'll put him up. But then when Prabhupada arrived, oh, he's actually here, So it was a monk there in Butler, Pennsylvania. It was in the newspapers. It was so rare. But he probably didn't want to, preach in Butler. There was not much going on. He said, if I'm going to fail, let me fail in New York. So he went to New York. Anyway, it's an incredible story told in the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. But he showed tremendous courage and determination because he had the mission. And the mission was to spread this science of God consciousness, of Krishna consciousness, which when you actually hear about it and you experience it, say this is the real hope for humanity. Because talk about the peace formula. There's a verse that Prabhupada says the peace formula. But it transforms the character in such a way that you're not trying to exploit others or to dominate, and you realize we all have an unbroken kinship. The bodies are all different. We may speak different languages, different genders, whatever, but we're all spirit souls. We're all conscious beings. And the wonderful thing you learn right at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter, you don't die. The soul never dies. We go from body to body, this idea of transmigration of the soul. And the wonderful thing is that there's empirical proof of that now, because otherwise it sounds like a myth. And the empirical proof is that there are certain babies and young children who seem to remember things that from previous life. After a while, if they forget it, if they grow up. But there's this one scientist called Ian Stevenson in the 70s. He became famous. And he had heard of this. He went to India and he started investigating them. He had a list of likely. And sure enough, he would go to the village that they claimed his real mother is there, and he would go and it checked out, the name of the village and the different people that said, this young 4-year-old just learning to talk. So, and there's a bunch of cases like that. Well, anyway, this is the A of the ABC of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita itself is introductory, but very essential book. So, but just see, if you really understand that and you believe it, it should change your whole concept of what's important in life, because you understand. Oh my God, I've had many births before, and according to this philosophy, I've come up. It's not I've had 1,000 human births. But I've come up through the different species. If you act very sinfully in your human life, then you lose it. You go down. There's no eternal damnation like that, but there can be a lot of suffering. Let's just put it that way. But everybody eventually comes back up to the human form of life. And then in this other book that Prabhupada mentioned, the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the ultimate commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, there is this wonderful verse I often quote, which Prabhupada would quote, Labdvasu durlamamidam bahu sambhavante manushyam artadam anityam apiya dhira. Turnam yate danapatira namrityayavad nikshayasaya vishaya kalusarvatakshyat. Very important verse. So this is, I believe it's in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is also speaking this verse. Labdva sudurlamamidam. You have attained this very rarely attained human form. Bahusam, after many, many births. Bahusam, manusham, same word, man, human. Artadam, key word. Artadam means in this form, unlike all these other lower forms, it can give you the ultimate value, the ultimate thing that's of value, which is breaking free from this birth and death, old age and disease, which is full of suffering. and return, it's an important point, return to our original home of eternal life, full bliss and unlimited knowledge. And this is the spiritual world, the kingdom of God, paradise. It's real. And all these teachers that I mentioned, in each line, they've realized that. And they've taken as their mission, teaching that to people in general, as out of compassion. Because we're all brothers and sisters. We all have the same Father, Krishna. So that's what Srila Prabhupada did. And his followers, I lived, in that same area, like 2 years later. I missed the 1966. I was there in 1968. The devotees are still there on the Lower East Side. They would be dancing on the street. But I was a total atheist at that time. I was, anyway, I'm not going to get into it. I said it a million times. But I was a street musician. I played the flute, and I would walk around. This is the hippie days, I may be older than I may look. I'll be 77 this month. Anyway, that's what clean living and high thinking will do for you. So I would walk around, and then I would hear, I was looking for some rhythm section where I could jam, little jazz. And I'd hear the chink, 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 and the drums. And that sounds like a good section, And I'd turn around the corner. Oh, God, it's the Hare Krishnas. I couldn't forget that. So that's where I was at that time. But anyway, that's a little sidelight. This book, when it finally came out in 1972, the unabridged version, it was a great effort to print it. Just try to imagine. It's so essential. We're struggling to chant the Sanskrit here, Imagine if you're trying to help Prabhupada put the book out, and you don't speak a word of Sanskrit, and he's dictating it, and every so often there's a verse, and the guy who's transcribing it, he wasn't even a devotee. He just walked in. He was a student, and this was his summer project that we'd get credit for, So he ended up typing, but when he came on a Sanskrit word, he skipped it or he put some nonsense in there, So the editors had to come by, and there's no way, there's no book of commentary which Prabhupada was using that they could read or that they could refer to. So it was a big job getting this book out. And finally, Prabhupada had trained one devotee named Prajumna to be a pretty good Sanskritist, and then Gopi Pranadhana was another one. So that's why there was a revision in '83, 6 years after Prabhupada left, that a revision came out. Because by that time, Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu, my dear godbrother who I worked with for years on Bhagavatam, he could read those commentaries, and Prabhupada is quoting this verse, he's quoting this verse, this is what he's saying, So this is this book, Bhagavad Gita, that we distribute by the millions now in different languages, was a great labor of love over, a long period of time to put it together like this. And the words, when Krishna speaks this, we're actually, getting Krishna's association. Because he actually spoke these words in the Sanskrit language, which is the original language. So let's see, just go through quickly. So he's saying here, I am within the heart of everyone. And from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Now let's just think about what that means. In other words, when we try to remember something, then we need the help of the Supersoul, who's witnessed everything. He's omniscient, he knows, and he can remind us. Or if it's not in our karma to remember it, whatever, then we'll forget it, forgetfulness. And so that forgetfulness can be very valuable because you go through some trauma, as we all do, death, rebirth, Isn't it nice that we don't remember the last death? I don't want to remember that, What to speak of birth? And the time in the womb, none of it was nice to remember. But we know, Krishna says here, we should keep that in mind. That's what it means to be embodied. You have to go through old age, disease, and death. No matter what you have developed in this world, you have a certain number of relatives and people you love, and you have a reputation that you've made. You have so much money in the bank. You've worked so hard, but all of it is taken away as soon as you leave this body. All that money in the bank has a name on the account. That name is the name of your body. When you get the next body, you have a different name. It's all gone. So what is the point of striving so hard to build up this identity and these possessions and everything in this world? It's just a big mistake. So what we should strive for, and that comes up, let me finish this verse because this is what the whole point is. It said, Manusham artadam But like all forms, it's anityam. It's not eternal. This form is not eternal. So we should use every second properly to actually move toward the goal of life, of human life. So he says, artadam anityam apiya dhira, another essential word. Dhira means one should be sober-minded. One should consider everything. And it's so important that we get exposed to this philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, because that should broaden our perspective of what our life is all about. So many other lives we've led to come to this point. We may have been demigods at one point, but fallen from that point, and then done sinful activity, go down to the dog's life, and then different kinds of dogs maybe, and then come up to this, whatever it is. In other words, we've been wandering here, we don't know how many millions of births. But now we have a chance, because of the knowledge of who we actually are and what our original home is, and the method of how to do it, all by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and his previous acharyas. And we have help from the Supersoul. He's teaching us. Now we can't hear him in there, so out of his mercy he comes outside in the form of the acharya or the guru and the shastra. This is the Supersoul speaking to us now. I am here in everyone's heart. So knowledge and remembrance and forgetfulness come from me. Then he says, from all the Vedas I am to be known. Very important. Because if you just don't know, I remember, my first exposure to this literature, and I remember I went to the library, where else you find a book, and there were all these green books, and it was all the Upanishads and everything. I said, wow, that must be interesting. I pulled one off the shelf. Well, I don't know what that is, like that. And it's a vast amount of knowledge, actually. And if you don't have a proper guide, or you don't know which books to concentrate on, then it can just be confusion. You don't know. There's a whole art called Ayurveda. It's famous. You can get an Ayurvedic license here in California, And it's part of the Vedas, but it's a school of medicine, And then there's also Jyotirveda, which is astrology, and that's also a science. There's also Dhanurveda, art of war. There's books on that. Part of the Vedas are very vast. But we're interested in the essence of the Vedic knowledge, the spiritual knowledge, which is contained in the Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta means the end of knowledge, the ultimate knowledge. It's not an accident that Prabhupada's name has that word in it. Bhakti Vedanta, which the very name means something. It means that the end of all knowledge, the culmination of knowledge, is bhakti, means loving devotional service to God, which can go on for eternity. That's our original position. You see, and we get this chapter began with the upside down banyan tree, the reflection, that the whole spiritual world is like a big tree with so many branches and so many fruits and so many things, and this world is a reflection of that. Probably, distorted reflection or perverted reflection. So with the roots up and the branches downward. So what is the basis of this tree that we're living in? Desire, material desire, which is a distortion of our original love for God, and it's all directed toward the things of the material world. So that we need to cut down that tree with the sword of, anyone remember? Detachment. Right, it's right here at the beginning. And having cut that down, we have to search out the Lord, who is the source of everything, and surrender. There's verses about that. So here Krishna is saying, I will help you. I am within everyone's heart, and I can remind you. Veda vid evachayam, I am to be known by all the Vedas. So we don't have to be confused with all the Upanishads. You can get very confused if you don't have a guide. What's it all about? But here Krishna says very, very clearly that by all the Vedas I am to be known. And Bhagavad Gita especially, what's the essence? The last couple of verses, the 65, 66, I put them in a poem. We're going to be coming up those within the next month or so. It summarizes the whole point of it. Manmana, here's the essential verses. Manmana bhava madbhakto madjaji mam namaskuru mamaivaishasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. It's repeated from the end of the 9th chapter. It's like variation. Just think of me, become devoted, worship me, and bow down low. You'll come to me, O friend. I promise you this boon I shall bestow. Then, Sarva dharmam parityajya mamekang sharanam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshiyasyami ma shuchaha. So, dharma. Just give up all other dharmas and surrender only unto me. Your sins I'll nullify, O Arjun, from anxiety be free. You see? Now we're also Krishna's friends ultimately, you see. So he's telling us the same thing. Basically saying, forget all the other things, like the karma yoga and the jnana yoga and the dhyana yoga I spoke about. I spoke about those so that Arjun would reject them, basically, especially the dhyana yoga. Arjun, who are we compared to Arjun? But it's too difficult. Chanchal, the mind is too obstinate, too uncontrollable, you know. And who's going to go off to the Himalayas? How many, or even some quiet spot, you know. You have to sit up straight, control the breath. Om. No, don't leave the class. It's not over yet. The point is, if Arjun couldn't do it, I tried it. I practiced that for a while. 15 minutes was my limit. You know, you have to meditate for years. You know, 15 minutes, and meditating on Om. Now, interestingly enough, I couldn't concentrate on Om, so I said I need another mantra. So I was part of the Integral Yoga. I don't know if anyone remembers those. They were pretty prominent back in the 70s, 80s. Integral Yoga Institute. So they had in Greenwich Village, they had a nice place. And they had a wonderful bookstore there, a gift shop. And in the gift shop was a booklet describing the glories of the Hare Krishna mantra. What is that? That's not ISKCON. How was that coming from? That the guru of Satchidananda Swami, he was the leader of it. He had been in South Africa, because South Africa was a big place where a lot of Indians came. And so he started an ashram there. And for 25 years, non-stop, supposedly, Akhanda Kirtan, there was unbroken chanting of Hare Krishna, this ashram. Now, I think in the late night it's probably recorded. But anyway, he was going on, and all this glorification of the Hare Krishna mantra. I said, this may be my mantra. I was a member of the Integral Yoga. So I took that Hare Krishna as my mantra. And after some time, I heard about the existence of the Hare Krishna. So I went to the temple, and the rest is history. But the point is, I started meditating on that mantra, and it was much more enlivening and easy to meditate on than just Om, Om. I mean, nothing. I don't have anything against Om, but it didn't have the beat, there's no mantra. So anyway, the Hare Krishna mantra is the Maha mantra, the great mantra. What does mantra mean? Mantra, delivering the mind. Man means mind. So mantra, and this is the Maha mantra, the great mantra for deliverance of the mind from what? From the ignorance, from the thrall of matter, and fixing it on the absolute truth. So, and the Supersoul will help us to remember. If Krishna sees in our heart that there's some flicker of interest in him, then he'll make arrangements that we can meet a devotee, that we'll get some prasadam and whatever. Yeah. He's ultimately in charge, So the more that we accept this knowledge and try to live it, the more we're finding ourselves becoming much more tolerant of this crazy world. I mean, it's hard for me to understand how anyone who's not Krishna conscious can survive in the present day. So much anxiety, But you can be free of anxiety, and you can be enlivened that you're experiencing more and more of Krishna consciousness in your relationship with Krishna, which is ultimately one of loving devotion and reciprocation on his part. The wonderful verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Ye yatam apapadyante, tam tataiva bhajamyaham. He says, as they surrender me, I reward them accordingly. So Krishna is perfectly reciprocal. If you make some sincere effort to understand him, he will respond. And often he responds within the heart by directing you, go here, do this, And that's the Supersoul, which is this very important verse. So any comments, questions on this particular verse and purport?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol Mateus.
Thank you for the class. So it says that I am the compiler of Vedanta and I'm the knower of the Vedas. Uh-huh. But, so he is I wrote it down here. Krishna is a compiler of all Vedas or just Vedanta?
No, the Vedas, because they were written by Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva wrote. They were all like one big Veda, and he divided them into four. It's described in the Bhagavatam.
But why does it say that I'm the compiler of Vedanta, not just like all Vedas, including Vedanta?
Well, you can only say so much in one verse, you know. Vedaischa Sarvaya. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta. I am the knower of the Vedas. Well, Prabhupada mentions it in the purport, I believe. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality. This is in the first paragraph of 608. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And Krishna in his incarnation as Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of Vedanta Sutra. So the point is that that same Vyasadeva, who is an incarnation of Krishna, a literary incarnation, he said, maybe Shakti-based maybe, he also wrote the Vedas famously. We learned that in the Bhagavatam, that he took the one Veda and divided it into four and then had it written down, you know, like that. So we can understand that he's you know, the same Krishna. But the end of all the knowledge is the Vedanta Sutra, and to understand the Vedanta Sutra we have the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam is the Gamakalpatado Galitam Palam Shukamakadamita Davasamnitam, is the ripened fruit of the desire trees of all the Vedas. Nigama means all the Vedic literature. Kalpataro is a desire tree. Galitam Palam means the ripened fruit. So what are we supposed to do with that fruit? Drink it. It's so soft and it's so relishable. Like a pomegranate. I mean, a pomegranate. This is a devotee from Toronto who comes and visits here. He's a friend of another devotee, my friend in Toronto. He was just here yesterday, the day before. And his brother lives here up in Vista. And he comes to visit him every now and then. So he brought me a bag. He's got all these fruits trees growing in his backyard. Last time I was there, I got some bananas and figs. Now he brought me a bag with, these are all from his backyard, fresh pomegranates and persimmons. And they were offered this morning. You know, they're all very, very nice, very delicious. So I may do a program up there while his brother is here. Anyway, yeah, the ripened fruit is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada has given us the essential books, beginning with Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's like this is the beginning volume, book, and the Bhagavatam is the graduate, and the CC is the postgraduate work. You know. So incredible effort, literary effort here that he performed. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
How do we understand that Srimad Bhagavatam is natural commentary of Vedanta?
How do we understand that? Well, from the commentators. And there are various cues. Just like the very first words of the Bhagavatam, Janmad Yasya Yaton Vayadita. There's your Janmad Yasya Yataha. The sutra is right there in the second verse. That's the first verse at the very beginning. Janma, but and what is that Janma? You know, the whole verse is about Bhagavan, right? About Krishna. So right away the answer is there to the question of, okay, inquire into the ultimate Brahman. And throughout the Bhagavatam, like you find the echoes of, the end of the verse goes Dhimahi. Dhimahi, it invokes the Gayatri mantra, which is an essential vibration, you know, like that. And then you'll find, right in the second chapter, there's this verse, I forget it, but that word jigyasa comes in there. It's slipping out of my mind. Which is right from the first word. Be curious. If you're not, I think it goes like this. Dharmak svanastatak pungsam vishvakshena katasayag nodpadi jadudatim shama evi kevalam. So the word isn't there, but the idea is there. Which is that you may follow your dharma very nicely. You know, you're a nice Kshatriya, Brahmin, whatever it may be. Dharmak suanastitak. It's not svanastita, but suan. Dharmak vishvakshena, it's a word for Krishna. It's a name for Krishna. Katasayak no, but it doesn't give rise in your mind to an interest of hearing about Krishna, then it's all Shama Evi Kevalam. You can be the president of this, and you could be in whatever position, but if your work is not inducing an interest in Krishna in you, then it's completely wasted labor. You're wasting your human life. So it comes up again and again, this inquisitiveness. Parabhavastava bodha jato yavan na jigyasa da atma tattvam. Tato brahma jigyasa in this verse. So Rishabdev, an incarnation of Krishna, is saying in the 5th canto that you will be defeated in your life, meaning you'll have to go birth, death, birth and death. You'll stay in the round of birth and death, as long as you don't inquire into the truth of the soul. Yavan najigyasa atma tattvam. Yavat kriyas, because as long as you do that, your mind will be filled with all kinds of food of desires. Tavadidam manovai karmatmakam yena sharira bandha. You'll be performing fruitive activities, and you'll be staying bound up to another physical body. So there's so many the same ideas. They're expanded in the Bhagavatam, you know, and so much detail about the actual personality of Godhead. 10th canto, you know. So all of our acharyas say this is and Lord Chaitanya said. That's why he didn't write one. He didn't write a commentary. We've got it in the Bhagavatam. But later on, you know, Baladev wrote one. There was some problem, but basically we have it. All right, let's read another verse, a short one. I think there's a short one there. Well, the verse is short. Yeah, it's not too bad. Dvavimau purusha loke charas chakshara evacha charak sarvani bhutani kutasto chara uchade. There are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Now, I have to explain that in Prabhupada's language, you know, he gave a new meaning to the word infallible. In fact, we can change the pronunciation. Infallible, meaning that in the spiritual world, no one falls down, basically. But in the material world, every living entity is fallible and has fallen. You can see. But in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. As already explained, the Lord in his incarnation as Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here the Lord is giving, in summary, the contents of the Vedanta Sutra. He says that the living entities, who are innumerable, can be divided into two classes, the fallible and the infallible. The living entities are eternally separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they are in contact with the material world, they are called Jiva Bhuta. And the Sanskrit words given here, Charak Sarvani Bhutani, mean that they are fallible. They've fallen. That's why they're fallible. Those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. Oneness does not mean that they have no individuality, but that there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of the creation. Of course, in the spiritual world, there is no such thing as creation, but since the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra, is the source of all emanations, that conception is explained. According to the statement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, there are two classes of living entities. The Vedas give evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities who are struggling in this world with the mind and 5 senses have their material bodies which are changing. As long as a living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter. Therefore, there is no change. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling and vanishing. These are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age, there is no birth, there is no death. There all exists in oneness. Sharak Sarvani Bhutani. Any living entity who has come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being Brahma down to the small ant, is changing its body. Therefore, they are all fallible. In the spiritual world, however, they are always liberated in oneness. So, I'm going to end with this poem. Now, some of you have seen this painting. Krishna is sitting out in the forest, very peacefully, very beautiful. And there's a little dove on his hand, and there's a little swan over here, and there's a little calf over here, and a deer. Okay? I think those are Shri Krishna. The sweetness of Shri Krishna's form beguiles. Still sweeter is his face like autumn moon. But sweeter than the sweetest is his smile, whose luscious beauty makes the gopis swoon. Govinda's beauty captivates the doves, the swans, the deer, the cows, and every tree. Indeed, in Braja, every creature loves Shri Krishna and is drowned in ecstasy. That all-enchanting land is paradise, our home where we may dwell eternally. Most welcome there are those who pay the price to learn to love Shri Krishna perfectly. So, think about that as we see the beautiful forms of Radha and Giridhari. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We'll do this again tomorrow. Okay.
This mantra, they said it was not Hare Krishna, it was Hare Rama. I read some Chaitanya Charitabali, people spoke about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it was written there that the mantra was not Hare Krishna, it was Hare Rama.
So, you're saying that we're on bona fide?
No, I don't know, I just said it's true.
I heard something recently about that let's see, we did 16. In this age, people are so fallen that they're not allowed to chant any Vedic mantras. So the Hare Rama, Hare Krishna is a Vedic mantra. So it had to be changed for us to chant it. That's why it starts with Hare Krishna. You understand? But after you chant one mantra, what's the difference? Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna.